Welcome to the Practical Data Community Lunch and Learn. So today we're going to talk about making your resume stand out. Aaron Wilkerson, well, I'll let him introduce himself in a bit, but he wrote a really good article. What was it, 2-3 weeks ago, Aaron? About exactly this topic, why your resume probably isn't standing out and why you're probably not getting, the follow-up that you probably hope for with your resume. So anyway, Aaron, I'll let you take it away. Feel free to introduce yourself, and it's your floor. So got it.
Yeah, so I'm Aaron Wilkerson, the Director of Data Strategy and Products at Carhartt. So I've been at Carhartt for about 3 years. The hoodie I'm wearing right now is a Carhartt hoodie. Huge fan of it. So I've been in the data space for 18 years now. So I've worked in all types of jobs. Like I started back when Business Objects was the thing before SAP bought them out. So Business Object with 6.5. Done a lot of the reporting stuff. I've done DBA, data architecture, ETL work, data engineering, pretty much everything I've done in the data space, except for I've not had like a formal like data science role, but everything else in the data world I have done for my career. So I've been doing data leadership for the past 10 years. So I was individual contributor, senior individual contributor for the first 8 years. In the past 10 years, I've been in data leadership. And then in the past 3 or 4 years, I've gotten more into like LinkedIn, kind of writing random thoughts on LinkedIn, writing random articles that I think are somewhat interesting. So really kind of gone the full gambit from a data career perspective. So the topic today, I'll kind of give how I got to this. So like, I post data jobs on LinkedIn a lot. So about a month ago, I posted a job as like a BI engineer, and like it just blew up. Like I had about I think we went from like 45 to like 600 like applicants in that week after I posted that job. And of that, like my LinkedIn follower count grew by like 600 plus people. My wife, she asked me, she's like, did you like buy all these people? Like, where do all these followers come from? I was like, no, I didn't pay for that. And then of that, like 100 people had like DM'd me to reach out, like to ask about the job. So to me, that just really just stood out that, we have I won't say a big problem, but there are a lot of people out there looking for data jobs. So I took that as an opportunity to start to kind of, peek through resumes. So like, people send you resumes. So I started just kind of poking through a lot of people's resumes, and within like the first like 5, I can be like, okay, I know exactly why like you guys are looking for jobs. You can't find anything. A lot of the feedback was the same. Like if you think about the regular job process, you submit an application on your resume. You get the initial phone screen, right? So someone from HR calls you and says, hey, I'd like to talk to you about the job. They want to make sure you can talk pretty clearly. If the phone screen happens well, you get like the hiring manager interview, and you kind of get the offer after that. So a lot of feedback I heard from people was like, either I'm not getting that initial like phone screen, or I'm not able to get like from the phone screen to like the next level. So, I started to kind of look at some people's resumes and said, hey, like I can kind of offer some coaching. Like I'm not a full-time coach, but I do coaching with my team members. I lead managers, so I do coaching with them. I hire people regularly, so I look at tons of resumes. So I have like started recently just doing some coaching on the side. So I did kind of webinar with like a group of like 50 people, and I kind of shared with them just some kind of big points. And I also wrote a newsletter article. So the one that Joe referenced earlier, like it was a Saturday morning. I kind of just started like writing up some notes. And the highlight of that was kind of I said like pipelines and workflows are not going to get you a job. And that's something I noticed a lot of people just their resumes just said like, I created a bunch of like pipelines and workflows. And like, it was like 90% of them had like the very same thing. And I think in this day and age where with so many fewer like entry level positions, you're competing with your competition is not like the guys and gals that you graduated from like college, university with. Like you're competing with people who just got laid off like last week. You're competing with people who worked like for years and years and years. So if your claim to fame is that you created some pipelines and workflows, like that is not going to get you a job. I'm sorry. If you're fresh out of school, I'm sorry that they didn't prep people for that, but I think some of the resumes I've seen kind of all look very much the same. And I kind of talk about that in an article, like figuring out what your unique story is extremely important. I think if you're not able to tell that in the resume, if I look at 5 resumes and I can't tell which one is yours, like that's a problem. But that is 100% happening right now. Like when people send me their resumes, I look at them. Like if you take the names off, I cannot differentiate people from each other because it's like I did pipelines, I did workflows, and efficiency. That's the third one. That's always the word people use is efficiencies. I improve efficiency by 10%. As a hiring manager, I don't know what that means. Like when people say that all the time, like improve efficiency, like efficiency of what? Like what did efficiency give you? Because if I'm more efficient, that just means I need to do something. So I'm in my kitchen right now. If I get more efficient about washing dishes, my wife expects me that now I'm going to also go do the laundry or I'm going to clean up the bathroom. Like me saying I'm more efficient about that only means that something else is going to get done. So I think that there's a lot of just buzzwords kind of going on right now. But I would say the big thing, and I'll stop talking after this for a second, is like figuring out the unique story. And I kind of talk about the article, like anytime you ask about me, I'm always going to talk about like, my like Catholic faith. I'm going to talk about my family. I'm going to talk about like my career, my job. My family's a huge. We go to Disney World a lot. Like there's elements around like you'll hear me say that is very specific to me. I'm from the city of Detroit. I went to school on the west side of Michigan. I lived in Michigan my whole life. Like there's elements about me that you'll see me say that are specific to me. That my greatest weakness is I work too hard. Or I care too much. There's elements to me that you'll always see that, but I think that people have a challenge with their resumes is that they're telling a very bland, generic story that's not specific to them. So if I'm a hiring manager, I have 600 applications. How do you stand out? Like, what is different about you that is not common amongst the people you're competing against? Because like I said, 600 people apply for one position in the course of a week. So if I'm a hiring manager, I'll look at a fraction of them, but if I'm going to look at yours for 5 seconds, what's going to speak out? So I got more, but I'll just stop there for now because I can go on and on about this.
I did have a question, Aaron. So I don't think I've struggled getting my resume seen. I've had 6 jobs in 5 years, so enough people wanted me, I guess, to hop, which is a different story. But something I had on for a while was the word Pythonista, like in my summary at the top of my resume. I eventually took it out because to me it was too limiting, like around Python, and also just a little corny. Like the word Pythonista is just kind of corny. How do you feel about, your experience, the resumes you've seen? I've also been on the other side and conducted a lot of interviews, so I look for things like that. But is corny like a bad thing, or does it express your personality, right? And how have you seen that in your experience?
It's a good question. I would say keep in mind your audience. So when you first submit your application, the first person that's probably going to look at it is somebody from like HR recruiter who knows nothing about what we do. They know nothing about data engineering, Python. So they're going to look for like keywords that the hiring manager gave them. So I think that's a cool thing to do personality wise, but I try to tell people to be very intentional about like each line in your resume, what you're trying to convey and making sure that stands out. So I would say consider that you're talking to an audience that doesn't know at all what any of that stuff means. So I think it's fine, but I would just say, just need to keep in mind that the rest of it needs to kind of be specific to like making it clear that you're qualified, for that job. But if it's a one-liner, if it's funny and it kind of comes across that way. Also, I would say it doesn't hurt to ask people who don't know. Like my wife has no clue what I do. Like she has no clue what I do. She doesn't know they get a paycheck. So I would say ask people who don't know anything about your field, like friends and family members. Hey, if you see this, like, is that funny? Do you think it's dumb? So I think you can always like test it out with peers just to say like, does this come across as kind of chachi or like, is it kind of funny? Or you're like, I have no clue what that is. I don't know why he put that there. So I think it's always good to check with people. But I would say, being very intentional, because a lot of the resumes I see, people put in these words that make no sense. And it's like, I've worked in this field for 18 years. I have no clue what that means. Like I saw this sentence. I don't know what that means. So if I don't know what that means, then people who have no clue what this stuff is are going to be like, I don't know what that means. They're just going to move on to the next person. So hopefully that answers your question somewhat.
No, it does. Thank you.
I have a question for you. What percentage of resumes do you put into the I will follow up with this resume pile?
I mean, usually it's a small. I would say usually it's like I won't say it's a small percentage, but like I'll take 100. If I get 100 resumes, I usually review all of them. I would say like up to like 10 to 20 I'll follow with. If you think about it, like someone has to schedule all those phone calls to actually like do the follow-up. So I would say 20 at the most, but I'm usually looking for like the top 10 to 15. And then of that, I'm going to whittle it down to 5. Then I'm going to have like group interviews with people, like 3 to 5. So it's kind of like 10 to 15. I'll whittle it down to, and like 3 to 5 for actual like group interviews with people. So it's kind of it shrinks pretty quickly. That's why I tell people, like, once you submit something, they're only going to scan your resume for like 3 to 5 seconds. So you got to come out swinging. Like, it has to be very strong and very clear, because if they see something that looks off, you're immediately going to get discarded, because it's like, I don't know what that means. Boom, typo. Boom, this doesn't make sense. Boom, out of here. So like, if you're competing with a lot of people, like I say, it's got to be strong pretty quickly.
I have a question.
Yep.
What do you say to someone in the context of improving their resume? To somebody that, say, has been locked into a certain tool set, right? And they want to move out of that. They want to apply to companies that are maybe working with stuff outside of that tool set, but they haven't worked with it directly before. Maybe they've taken some courses, done some projects, that sort of thing. How do you convey that on a resume without sounding maybe inexperienced?
So you're saying that if the job asks for a specific tool, but you haven't used that tool?
Yeah, let's say, for example, I'll give you a specific example. In my case, let's say somebody is doing data engineering work in, say, something like Microsoft Fabric. It's a specific set of tools that's maybe, abstracted in a certain way, and somebody wants to go to apply to companies that are using things like Airflow for orchestration. They've started to learn that sort of thing, but might not have the direct experience. How should somebody convey that on a resume?
I mean, if I'm honest, I would say it's very tricky, because with such a large population of candidates, hiring managers are able to be much more picky. So if I'm trying to take my team into Fabric, and I find someone who has Fabric experience, and everything else being equal, but like they have Fabric experience, they're going to take the person with Fabric experience. So I would say, learning about it, getting certifications is nice. Like, getting as much training, like projects, if you can start to do your own side projects, I think posting about it. So I think becoming the Fabric person, like, okay, starting to say, I learned, like, Microsoft's got these new things coming out, like starting to post a lot of content to show your expertise in Fabric is very helpful. So I'll say, do everything you can. I mean, of course you can't lie. You get to be honest and say, I've actually not hands-on done it, but I would say you're going to have to go above and beyond to show that, hey, even though I'm lacking in this, like, I'm going to do my best to learn on this quickly, or like I'm going to gain these skills pretty quickly. So I would say you have to over leverage in everything else, because you can't make up, and the competition has it and you don't. You have to do everything else to make up for that, unfortunately. Because it does happen. I would say in the older days, I think when I first started, we didn't get so held up on tools, because we knew that people were smart. They would learn pretty quickly these different tools. A lot of the tools are very similar to each other, where it's like, okay, he doesn't know this, but this is similar enough where like you can learn this pretty quickly on the job. So I would say the tools I would say in the past kind of decade, like we're leaning more and more. Like, I used to be big into Oracle. Like, I switched over into SQL Server from Oracle. So T-SQL to like PL SQL and all that kind of stuff. So we've become much more specialized, but I think that's when you have to kind of just over-index on just expertise and sharing a lot about what you're learning about Fabric, and taking projects, like showing code, like projects and GitHub, like showing, okay, this is how I would code this in Fabric, like just starting to go a lot into content and sharing expertise.
how do you filter out GitHub right now? Because I've been hearing that it's not what it used to be, since everyone can just have an LLM write all the code for them. So how do you view GitHub projects these days?
I'm still seeing I still see a lot of projects, like people like sharing projects in GitHub. I think the storytelling is starting to become more important, like not just posting the code, but like sharing what it is, how I came up with this, how I wrote it, what impact it does. So I think that that's going to become first and foremost, just because like a lot of people reviewing it may not know anything about, or may not even be able to write a lick of code or understand the code. But I think understanding or sharing that story about like what the heck you did and like why, like the README files, and like being able to kind of tell that story. Just because to your point, Joe, like a lot of people can kind of fake code or like just vibe code their way into like having this huge thing. So I think having to like describing like, okay, how did you write this? Like, well, how would you use this? Like, you're gonna have to kind of share how, like the person side of it, because it's so easy for AI to just come up with all this stuff for you, even describe it. So I think you have to be much more human about the projects.
Yeah, this is advice I've been giving people too, like maybe get into YouTube or blogging as an exercise, because I think to me that shows communication. I mean, pretty soon people are going to be making videos with VO and shit, and then just pretending it's them and explaining their projects. So I don't know. Then I guess it goes back to in-person meetups now, and then you until you have humanoids next year. So yeah, it's crazy though, because it's just that I talk to recruiters, and there's definitely a sense of it's easy to impersonate these days in ways that just never happened. Like impersonation does happen. Like I remember we were interviewing somebody once from I think it was India, and the person doing the interview was not the person who showed up for work. Thankfully, that person lasted about 1 minute, and we're like, "You're not the person we hired, so bye-bye."
Yeah.
So I mean, the impersonation's been happening for a long time, but yeah, it's going to get very, very interesting. So,
Yeah, I've heard of people also like have like when they do interviews, like they have to show their ID. So you have to pull your ID up to show like you're the person who's interviewing, like your actual face matches that, just because impersonation, like you'll have your friend do your interview for you, and like you said, you show up that day of. They'll be like, wait a second, you're not the same person that
it's crazy. I was just hanging out with Jessica Talisman's son, actually. He's a college kid who lives down the block from me, and they're all like 18. They're showing up with fake IDs. I know it's being recorded, but yeah, sorry kids. But they're good. They're passable, and they scan, so it's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and then it also goes to just the humanity, and I think content is going to, like Joe, you talk about just obscurity is the biggest thing going against. I think that it's going to push us, a lot of people, into generating content. So newsletters, YouTube videos, writing stuff on LinkedIn, also meeting people in person. I think that's like, I mean, I know a lot of people are nervous to do these things, but it's going to be the differentiator between you getting a job versus you not. Like you have to have, and I said that like, from a story perspective, you have your resume, you have referrals, you have your LinkedIn presence, you have your social presence. Like there's all these elements of you that are going to have to be like table stakes in order for you to kind of stand out. Because if you have all of those, like the Infinity Gauntlet, if you have all 5 Infinity Stones, then boom, you can do something. But if you only got 1 or 2, like you're fighting against someone who has all of them. And I think that's also just an opportunity. I tell people it's like, it has to be connected, right? So your resume should connect to your portfolio, which should connect to your LinkedIn presence. Because I see a lot of people who have like the resume summary is different than the LinkedIn about me. It doesn't connect to the GitHub. So it's like, if I'm a recruiter, I'm looking at all 3 of these, you're telling 3 different stories. So it's like, who are you? Because I looked across all these and it doesn't make any sense. And the recruiters are looking at your LinkedIn profile. So I was talking to somebody from a coaching call, and he said like he was applying for jobs, and like 20% of the people like that are viewing his profile are recruiters from company he applied to. So it's like people are going from your resume. That's the first thing. When I go from resume, I immediately go to your LinkedIn profile. And if I see no picture, no about me, I see no content in the past like month or year, like immediately I'm like, all right, like this person doesn't care.
Yeah, and I don't want to bring follower count into it, but I'm going to. Like if you have a lower follower count, I'm just saying it looks odd. So, and especially when you include everything else that you just mentioned, like no picture, hasn't been updated, then I think you're probably a bot, actually. So
Exactly.
I mean, so, or a serial killer, one of the two. But just it's
Because and I have to be, it's like tough love. Like, it's not difficult to do. Like, I think people overthink the content thing. And if you're out there looking for jobs, like, there's a lot of people just doing like the easy applies. They'll spend like an hour applying to jobs, but it's like, what else are you doing with your day? Is it that hard to just like to write a post on LinkedIn that says, hey, I'm applying to jobs. By the way, I'm learning this cool thing about fabric, like, or you comment on people. Like, it's just those simple things that I think people overthink. It's like, if you're trying to differentiate yourself, like along your resume, making sure it's clear, like improving your presence is going to, it's a big deal. And it's not difficult. Like writing a sentence about what you did today, like, you know what you did today. Just write about what you learned today. Like that's it. That's the post.
Yeah, and Sam mentions commenting and actually DMing people. I think that's definitely important.
Yeah,
So,
like say, hey, I like your article. Great article. I like what you said. Hey, really inspiring. Thanks a lot. Like it's just these simple things. Like it's like the very bare bones around, like it's just the ground, like kind of the guerrilla warfare around just like these basic things that'll get you that'll get you seen, presented to others, and kind of be the difference in getting a job.
what resume questions do you have for Aaron?
I have another question, if that's
Yep.
all right. So this might be, I think, a little bit more of a general resume question, but what is your opinion on, say, flashy resumes versus something more plain?
I
matter?
talked to I talked to HR recruiter about this. He said like formats don't really matter. You want to be able to find the information easy. So you can have like this nice, extremely glossy resume, but it's like the whole lipstick on the pig. Like if the actual meat of the resume is like very bland and generic, that format is not going to make a difference. So at a certain point, these HR folks have seen all these different formats, but they're just trying to look through this pretty quickly to figure out, to make a determination. So I would say make it extremely easy for people to learn about you. Like if you make it difficult for people to learn about you, they're going to discard it. So like I said, give it to someone else who you know and say, hey, if you want to know, like, and ask some questions, hey, like, does this come across correctly? Does this make sense? Like, I think being able to come across very easy to learn about you. So, I mean, those simple formats, like, I haven't touched my resume in about 3 years, but my resume is extremely simple. It looks like probably like a lot of your resumes, just like my name, a quick summary. It goes straight to my work experiences, kind of details them. Like, you want to make it extremely easy for people to learn about you so they can say, make a quick determination. So, doing these formats where it's kind of hard to find out stuff. Okay, where do I find this work summary? You put all these words here. So I mean, even talking with folks in the field, like I would say make it simple.
I want to ask a question. I don't know if you want to read that out or if you want me to read it, I can read it. I'll just read it. I need tips on how to support my story in a structured resume with numbers, facts, and figures. How can I prove that I've made an impact? That's one of the comments here.
Numbers, facts, and figures. It's a good question. I mean, like I said, simplicity is key. I think that typically when you're listing out work experience, you usually put a couple sentences. So I think you have to find a way to kind of summarize it like in a sentence or two. But also, I think you can also, that's why I think you have LinkedIn. So I think the resume is just kind of a teaser. But I think also if people look at your LinkedIn, that's where you can kind of maybe describe it a little more in depth and say, okay, here's the backstory around like all the stuff that I did. But yeah, I think you kind of put the kind of sentence or two and say, hey, I worked on this project. We increased efficiency, and because of that, we got product out 3 weeks faster. But I think the numbers and facts has to also go into the outcomes, right? So just saying I deployed 50 pipelines, that's not a number of fact that people are going to care about. It's saying I deployed pipelines so that we were able to generate products faster, or we got things in front of our customers faster. So you have to put both together. So you can't just put one in isolation. You have to say, I did this, and because of that, this other thing happened. So it goes to the outcomes over outputs sentiment of that. So I think don't just lead with like random numbers. Like you have to tell the story in a sentence too. But I think LinkedIn is where you can kind of, in your about me, you can kind of, or your profile, you can talk more about that, have much more sentences. But in your resume, you want to keep it very straightforward about those sentences, but have another place to put more detail of that.
I want to say something more general, Aaron, about being subjective versus being objective, because I have been in hiring places, hiring teams where me and another person were looking at the same resumes, and we picked very different people, and it's all thanks to my teaching background. I could filter out where, especially the juniors, what they were fluffing, because if they studied 10 tools in a course, they would list all of them as if they were experts in all of them. So what do you do with that? And to tie it back to the previous question of Jose with the Fabric, Microsoft Fabric, you may end up choosing the person with the Fabric skills, but just because he has experience, but maybe a worse practitioner overall. So there is such a trade-off, and it's a complex function, right? That you have to, there are many parameters. Now I'm gonna speak like that because everybody understands that, right? So it's very complex, and not to mention that we start with a bias and what we're interested the most. So it's hard to be objective in that sense. And time is a big factor also.
Hiring is a crapshoot. Like there's people who've hired, like been in this leadership for decades and they still hire the wrong people. Like you don't know. That's what they say, like hire, it's like hire fast, it's hire slow and fire fast or something like that. Like you really don't know. And like to your point, Ramona, that you can give resumes to different people and they'll have two different determinations around they're qualified or not. So that's why you're right. It is subjective, but you are right in that there are some tells. Like in some of the resumes I see from people, they list out every single tool known to man, like Excel, they put Python, Airflow, Iceberg. When they do stuff like that, you know pretty quickly that this person like is kind of giving you BS. Like they just did a bunch of courses, they did like a boot camp, and they just went over everything, but their level of detail is not that way. Like typically it's someone who's very experienced, knows like one tool extremely well, maybe two, and they can kind of have projects to support that. So you see that through how they talk about their project. They'll talk about the projects, like what they did. But if you see them lead with tools like in Excel, or sorry, I keep saying Excel, in Python, I did this, and then they start listing out these different tools. That's to tell that they have to lead with the tools because they don't have the experience to talk about the experience. Because that's like I said, it goes back to the outcomes of like, I just want the outcome. I don't care how you guys do it, what tools you use, but it's like they lead with that, then you can tell there's different tells, to your point, that people put in their resumes. We can kind of see it flags pretty quickly.
So we need a BS filter, that's for sure. And I'm also thinking, and this is something that I've been talking a little bit with Joe at some other times, about the critical thinking part. It's almost like we should be able to evaluate that component, how you think on your feet. Now I'm giving you a problem you've never seen before. I want to see how you would address it, because you can pick up tools. We have now catalogs of tools. We plug and play. We have AI. Whatever. Now figuring things out is much easier. But how you get to the figuring out part, I think that is essential, and that is where we should start. That's how I see things. So I'm just throwing it here to hear opinions, not.
I would usually do my interviews that way, like, either ask the person about, a challenging thing that they solved, and then dig into, okay, so how did you do it? Why did you take this direction? Or throwing a mock scenario at them and asking, okay, so, this happens. What do you do? Okay, a classic one is the organizational stuff, right? This has nothing to do with tools at all, but this is, as we all know, the sort of reality of things. But okay, so different department doesn't believe your reports. How do you handle this?
Yeah.
Right. Especially now with AI, it's like I think you still need to show competence in tools, but I think it's almost, it can be gamed like that, and I don't think that's the challenging thing anymore. Still need to be competent technically, but I think that now it's going to be more about the business facing things too, which it always has been, right? I think because we do data and technology, we're like, well, let's ignore that conveniently, even though it's the thing that kind of matters to our jobs. Let's just pretend that doesn't exist, and we'll just focus on the tech part. Or how do you deal with a product manager or a project manager who's not an idiot, or great, whatever, right? But that's kind of stuff I want to evaluate too. So
yeah, and that's the thing you have to be careful about too in interviews. That like when I interview people, like I can easily ask the right, like the interviewers know how to ask the questions to flag the BS, and they know how to like peel apart your answers and say, well, you said that, okay, let's dig into that. So I think being very careful about not lying or like not embellishing it, because you can and will get caught by the right interviewer who'll be like, then once they catch you, then like the interview's done. So I think you really have to be careful about how you like your experience and like being able to say, okay, I went this far, but I didn't do that part of it. Like it's okay to be honest. It's okay to say, well, I didn't do that part. Like no one's gonna say, well, it may, but like you're not gonna get dinged because you say, well, I didn't do that part of it, someone else did, but you will get dinged if you lie about it and they catch you in a lie, which is pretty quickly to do once you start to peel the layer back on someone explaining a project and being asked about, like even with tools, like, well, you did that, okay, well, how did you configure that? How did you do the environment variables? Well, so that's why you have to be very careful about your resume and your embellishing kind of your experiences too.
Well, especially if somebody comes from a bigger company, because it's easier to hide with the accomplishments of the big company and then taking credit for that. But it's it's easier to obfuscate things precisely because it's so big. Nobody even probably knows that you work there.
Yeah,
you're like Milton in office space. It's like hasn't been actually collecting a paycheck in years, and he lives in the basement. So so that's crazy.
So I do want to answer Jacob's question. So LinkedIn presence. So this comes up a lot, and I think it really depends on your employer. I've been active on LinkedIn since 2022, and it's never been a problem by employer, right? So my last employer. So usually what happens is once you start posting on LinkedIn, you'll get comments from your colleagues. Oh, I see you're on LinkedIn. You're trying to be an influence. So you have to get through the fog of people like giving you kind of shade for the first month. Because after a while, they'll leave you alone once they see that you're regularly posting. And I typically don't talk about specific instances at work. I talk about like general things. I talk about the past. I don't say, well, this happened at Carhartt yesterday. Let me go complain about that. So I've only had positive things. Like I have my executive team that comes to me and says, hey, I love what you're posting on LinkedIn. I got people all the time at work saying, hey, I love what you're posting on LinkedIn. So I'll say more often than not, you're gonna get much more praise about posting and kind of having thought leadership versus people saying like, hey, you need to take that down or you need to stop posting. I mean, if you're posting about particular people, or if you're posting about like, hey, I coded this yesterday, then it could be a problem. But I would say growing my LinkedIn presence has been the biggest thing I've done for my career. Like it's how I only got my current job at Carhartt because I was posting on LinkedIn. A recruiter had reached out to me in my DM and I applied to and I got the job. So I would attribute all that to just having a bigger presence on LinkedIn. So I would say, don't fear it. I think, if you want to have a conversation with your leader and say, hey, like I'm trying to do some stuff outside of work. I promise to not post on company time. I promise to not talk about like projects we're working on. So I think having setting that standard. So, but it can go. I've seen also some people kind of get pressured into like, hey, you should be posting about our company. You should be hitting up all your LinkedIn contents and stuff. So I think you'd be like, yeah, there are some kind of I won't say shady, but like weirder companies. But I would say for the most part, I've only had positive things about posting on LinkedIn and increasing my presence. And I've not heard anything negative. In terms of applying me a job, looking for a job, a lot of that's through just DMs. I mean, if you know recruiters, I think you can kind of DM recruiters, send emails to recruiters, say, I'm looking for a job. So I think, as long as you're not putting that green open to work when you have a job, that's going to cause people some questions. But like if I had someone on my team starting to post on LinkedIn a lot more, I wouldn't be nervous. Well, hey, it's great. You're increasing your presence, growing your network. Like those are all positive things. So the only thing you have to worry about is just those first comments the first month, because people will be like, oh, like you're trying to do this now. You're like, you just say, yes, I am trying to grow my network. Yep, I am. That's fine.
Yeah, I've had several friends ask the same question, really, how far, into social media should it be going? because people at work might start looking at me different, right? You know, one of my friends, she's got like 300,000 followers on Instagram, for example. That was from a different thing, right? Being a professional athlete. Now she's a data engineer, and you know, she's asking, well, do I go on LinkedIn? And I'm like, hell yeah, you do. I mean, you already know how to do social media. You know, and here's the reality too. It's like, especially now, nobody's going to take charge of your career except for you.
Yep.
I think if people have a problem with you, you know, posting, I think, you know, as I wrote in the chat, that's more a reflection on them and maybe their insecurities about where they are and their position. But I've always felt that nobody should, you know, nobody has a right to hold you back either. Like if you do, then that's on you. If you feel that you know, people's opinions of your behavior are more important than your actions for your career, I guess, you know, you're going to get what you get out of that. So, but it is scary. I get it, right? Like it's a weird look, but I think people forget about it, and pretty soon you're just that dork on LinkedIn that, you know, it's one of your coworkers, and that's, yeah. But I think it is an insecurity, I say, with a lot of people.
Yep.
Because you don't. In what is it in Australia? They call it the tall poppies, right? So if you try and rise above everybody else, you get cut down to size immediately. Organizations do this to people. I think it's cruel, but especially in this day and age, right? Like jobs aren't meant to be permanent. Like there's no such thing as lifelong employment. So the only thing you can do is take charge of your career at this point. You know, I think that's the advice that I typically give. I mean, I haven't applied for a job. I don't even know how long. Like I can't remember the last time, right? But the thing is, I could get opportunities in front of me if I wanted them. But the thing is, I built a network, right? That's not me being cocky. It's just true. But that it came through a lot of work to get there, right? And I think a lot of people, as you're visible, you have more opportunities in front of you than, like, you know, somebody who was just obscure and nobody knows, right? Like I've seen people get laid off. I've seen, you know, recently in the last few weeks, and they've already found work, right? They were, because people knew who they were, and they had a good reputation and all those kind of things. And I've seen other people that have been looking for work for 2 years now and haven't found anything. And that's, you know, and talking with them, it sucks, you know, and it's depressing, but that also happens. But I think those people aren't as, you know, aggressive in getting out there. But that's, again, it's a personal call at the end of the day. So
yeah, you don't want to sacrifice your career necessarily for your company, because I'm almost daily seeing people like getting laid off. There's a lot of these like rifts and like reduction of workforces. Like people are getting laid off left and right, in particular in the data industry. So I would feel really bad if like I like stepped away from like building my own, you know, personal brand and things like that for this company, who laid me off with no warning, just dropped me and like, here's a severance, you know, have a good life. Like, why sacrifice? Like, I didn't post all this stuff because you guys told me not to. You felt bad about it. So to me, like, first and foremost is, and I've kind of, that's been the pivot, like in the past couple of years, is like, first and foremost is like me and my personal brand and building that. And just so happens that I work for Carhartt, because I've worked at 8 different companies in my career. So me being at Carhartt for the rest of my career, I mean, in my early 40s, of being there next 20 years, you know, the likelihood is probably not that high. So I know that so you have to kind of like build out, you know, your own personal brand and your own career outside of your current company, just because you just never know what they're going to do. Every company says your family, we don't do layoffs until they do it, and then you're there. I've seen it happen to tons of people who worked at places for 10, 20 years and get laid off, no goodbyes, just like that person's gone and you got nothing. Like, then that's when you see people, hey, everyone, I'm looking for a job. I would love to reach out to referrals, and that person hasn't talked to you in 20 years. Like, that's my other pet peeve. Yeah, I would say I would lean into it and then ask for forgiveness, not permission.
And it's something you should be doing at all stages of your career. Like, you know, I have a friend of mine, you know, she's been a C-level in the data industry before. And, you know, recently an employer was, you know, basically muzzled and told, like, you know, you can't do public stuff. And then that forced a decision to go to a different company. Because I think, you know, especially as you get higher up, it's one of those things where, you know, the company may not want you to say anything because you're now an executive. And so you have to keep that in mind. But I think what the person realizes is that they ultimately they're in charge of their brand and their career, and these jobs come and go. But like, the only thing you can count on is yourself. Because as you say, rips happen all the time now. Like, that's tragic and it's super common.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I know one guy, he was at the same company for like 25 years, 25 years, something like that. I think I wrote about it in the article, anonymized, but like I saw him at one of my meetups around here recently, like it was last year. I was like, why are you out here right now? He's like, well, we skipped up a private equity company and I don't know anyone outside the walls of my company. Which, you know, if there's a layoff, like all those people are looking for work too. So it's every man for himself at that point. They don't give a shit.
Yep.
So he's trying to build his network that was smart. So I think they did have layoffs, and that definitely helped push it.
I would say, and this stuff works. I mean, like I said, I got the job at Carhartt almost 3 years ago because someone had reached out to me on LinkedIn. Like I haven't applied to a job in good 10 years. Like this year, I've had several people reach out to me about jobs. I've said no to all of them because I don't want to move across the state. But, you know, like this stuff we're talking about works. And I think there's enough examples out there of only good things have happened to me from increasing my social presence. Like the reason why I'm on this show with Joe is because I've been posting on LinkedIn. I think we met at Day to Day Texas a while back. Like like all the people I know in the industry are just through like LinkedIn and just meeting people in the real world. So I would say this stuff works. It's just a matter of when you decide that it's going to work for you, because the proof is out there. We don't need to prove this. Like the model's been proven time and time and again. So just more about when everyone's ready to make the jump. So look in the chat. So portfolios and certifications, I think it's kind of a hierarchy. I think if you have actual like work experience, that should be first and foremost. I would say certifications. The problem is they're so easy to get nowadays. Like it's not a differentiator because you can take something over the weekend, over a quick weekend and get a certification. It's pretty easy to do nowadays. So that's not going to be a differentiator for you. But if you have no work experience, I think it helps a little bit. Same in portfolios, like it's nice to have, but I think those are substitutes for if you don't have work experience, then you can have portfolios that will help kind of show that you know the talk. So they'll set you apart from someone that doesn't have one. But I would say work experience and having actual like real world projects for companies is much more primary.
But how do you get that though? I think that's the big question for juniors is like, well, how do I even get that first project? Like,
yeah,
you hire me. So
yeah, and I think that's where like you can do certifications and portfolios. I always say like, you just need to start to reach out to people and like work for free or like do some internships if you can. Internships, local companies say, hey, like I would love to take a data set. Like, can I just do an analysis for you and put you on my resume? Like it's just kind of like that guerrilla warfare, like having to go death by 1,000 cuts, like reaching out to everybody and trying to get that on your resume, because it's not gonna be easy. Unfortunately, like none of this is going to be easy if you're starting out. It's a whole different world now. So there's no easy path.
Go to meetups too if there are any in your area, or better yet, start one. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. I think building a community is actually awesome. I've done, it's one of the ways I got integrated into my local area. But like go to a meetup, volunteer, get to know people. People showing up are often engineers who have jobs, right? Or data scientists or whatever. Those could be the people that hire you. I hired a kid out of who kept attending my Python meetup. He was in the I think his background was in academics doing astrophysics. But he started giving talks at the meetup. Struck me as a pretty smart kid. At some point I needed an engineer, so I hired him. He ended up being great, right? But he took the initiative just to be active in the community and just get out there and do stuff. And I would say, like, especially when you're starting out, you're gonna have to pay it forward a lot. Like you're gonna have to be doing a lot of stuff for free. You're gonna have to be doing a lot of things without any expectation in return. So don't be transactional. This might go for a bit, but eventually you'll be paid back, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. I mean, I think the meetup is extremely good. A great point. I co-founded a meetup in the Detroit area. We've been doing stuff for a year. But like, if someone asks me for a referral, I usually don't. But if you came to one of our meetups and I met you, you came twice or one time, I'm much more inclined to give you a referral because you put in the effort to show up to the meetup. Like you drove, you hopefully shower, put on nice clothes. Like you showed up to the meetup and meet me in person. Like, so I'm going to pay it forward and be like, hey, they took the effort to show up for me. I can only do so much. I can be like, hey, I talked to him in the real world. He's a real person. He's a very nice guy. He shows up. He says this. So like, I can only give you so much from a referral, but I think people are much more inclined to do that for someone they've met in the real world versus like I've never met this person in my life. They seem okay from their profile, but I haven't. So yeah, I definitely encourage finding a local meetup or starting one. I've been having a lot of conversation with the folks recently about how to start a meetup, because we've started one and we've got close to 300 people. If you're nervous about meetups, I would say read a book about how to do small talk, or like how to get over nerves. That's the biggest thing. People are nervous about talking to people they don't know. But I mean, there's books, there's YouTube clips about it. Like, it's pretty quick to do. I hate small talk. I've had to learn that because I do this all the time now. So yeah, it's just a part of it.
Ramon has a good point too. Is start developing soft skills. So witnesses people at meetups unable to put together two sentences. Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, they're really like robots, and
Yeah.
they just start reciting, and it's so weird. Well, I don't know. But then we were starting a pilot project where we, the seniors, we are mentoring juniors, and I said, okay, there are so many technical bros in the group. I said, I wanna mentor on this aspect. And do you think I got any interest? Everybody thinks I'm crazy, because why should I put value on that? And then I'm thinking, it's your loss, because you don't know how important those skills are. And
it's a big one. The one thing I'll talk about, like, I was at a cocktail party. It was in Perth or something like that in Australia last year, and it's a cocktail party, right? Like, we're just hanging out, having beers, cocktails, whatever, after a conference, and this guy's walking around handing out resumes. And you could just see kind of people like avoiding him. It's like just we don't want to have this interaction right now. It's just weird.
And I think that's a sign. Like, I think the challenge is we live in such a virtual world where, like, I can get my, like, I can go to university or college virtually, get my degree virtually, get my master's degree virtually, or work so virtually. So once people do come out in the real world, they haven't really developed those social skills just because they've been kind of behind their computer and like live in this virtual world. So that's another point about the meetups, is like, it gets you in front of real people to have like real conversations. You see pretty clearly how you come across. It's like, oh, I sound like a robot. I need to fix this. And also, my advice I always give to people in their careers is like, you should find a job where you have to be there every day. Like, if you're early in your career, you need to learn how to talk to people in the real world. You need to learn how to be around people and like have those, like, learn those social cues, because, like, I mean, I've worked enough where I work kind of mainly remote now, but I can imagine being like new to my career, like working only remote, like, because there's so much, like, there's water cooler stuff. You're not in front of executive leadership. Like, so I think as early you are in your career, I tell people, like, go and see people in the real world. Like, you need to get that experience. Someone asked about a resume that stuck out to me positively and why. I would say for positions I look for, it's sharing the story about just projects they've worked on. So, I mean, if you have the tools, that's great, but like describing, like, I worked on this project, we had this benefit to the business. If you can attract it to like either new customers, new products, increase revenue, like actually describing your projects from a business impact, I think definitely sticks out, because it shows that you know the business, you know how it works. So I think actually like sharing stories, not just like a robotic, I did pipelines, I use these different tools, and it doesn't matter. Cover letters, yes. So actually I talked to one of our HR recruiters at Carhartt, and they do read cover letters. So that's where you do get personalized. So they said we look at cover letters, we still look at like the resume summaries. So if there's an opportunity, it doesn't hurt, because it's another opportunity to describe yourself and add the personality to it. So I don't know if all of them do it, but I know that we have recruiters that have said they do still look at cover letters. And that's where you do kind of offer that personal touch of, this is me, this is why I'm relevant to the job, and I think I can do the job.
Do you get tired of seeing the action words? And when I say action words, created, developed, modeled, moderated, do you get tired of reading those in cover letters, or is it about how they're used in telling the story? Because when you go to resume, what's it called now? meetings where they talk about resumes, those are one of the things they talk about, using action words to describe yourself or describe the impact of whatever it is that you did. And you've mentioned over and over again about how things just come off robotic. So the question now is, if you're going to mention impact, you definitely have to add one of those words somehow. How do you tell that story in a non-robotic AI way, that, or maybe add a personal touch to that as well, you know?
Read it out loud to someone and get some honest feedback of how does this sound, because it's easy to look at something on paper like created this, modified that. Like if you read that out loud and you just like you get disgusted by your own self saying it out loud, then I think that's a good tell around if that works. And I mean, I think action words are fine as long as it's not like obvious that you're obviously trying to use certain words. You're obviously trying to come across a certain way, because when I'm reading like a third party reading this, like if it comes off gross to you or someone you know, it's also going to come off across that way to someone who doesn't know you at all. So I just have to be careful about the some of the kind of the familiar suggestions. If it feels yucky to you, if it doesn't feel right to you, then I would say just don't do it. Like the whole thing about the ATS and trying to beat the ATS system. I mean, a lot of people just read those resumes. They're not like going through certain systems, or it's very easy to beat those systems. Like you just put a couple words in there. But I would say that if it feels weird to you, then I would say just don't do it. It doesn't make sense. Or it's not how the way you talk. If you're like, I don't talk this way, then don't put that in the resume.
Thanks.
Pay resume review services. I mean, I think I always say that to people. It's interesting how people drop like $100,000 on a degree, but they won't spend like $50 for someone to review their resume. You know, I would say, I think if you go with someone who's like, I mean, if it's just like agnostic, kind of like a generic resume service, maybe not. But if it's something who does, like people who specialize in like data jobs or has worked as a hiring manager, I think those are folks. I mean, I do this if someone wants to work with me to do that, that's fine, but I'm not trying to push anything. But I think it's helpful to work with people and like get some feedback. So I would say if you're out there looking for a job, you haven't found one for months and months and months, then it may not hurt to spend like $70 on someone to kind of review your resume, give you some feedback that may be helpful. Because the worst that can happen is you hear nothing, which you haven't heard for the past couple months. The best that can happen is that $80 got you a $80,000 job starting in the next month. So it's kind of a, you know, what do you have to, of course, if it's like thousands of dollars, maybe not, but I think there's enough options out there. You know, I know people, so reach out to me if you want to know some names. I know some folks, but I would say it doesn't hurt if you've really been struggling the past couple months to find something.
But you can pay a whole month for all 3 LLMs for that price, and maybe you get a better thing. I'm sarcastic, okay? It's just.
Well, I mean, truth be told, it might do a good job, or at least a video. I wouldn't, yeah. So
I tell people to test. I mean, I think like submitting your application to like 100 companies in one day, I don't think that certainly makes sense. I think you kind of you can have multiple versions of your resume. You kind of test one version with some companies, test another one with some other, like doing some testing with your resume to figure out like, okay, which attracts people to contact you back. But put everything on black and just submitting all your applications with one resume, like that's a big gamble, because if you have problems with it, then you just eliminate yourself from all these jobs. So I would say cut it up and kind of do some different versions and kind of test it out a couple of different ways to figure out which version is getting more feedback and go that way.
Well, and your data people too, like keep it data driven. Like, yeah, to Aaron's point, like A/B test it, which one did better, keep track of it, you know, fine tune it. Because and it's interesting these days because it's humans and AI screening you, but then it's humans and AI also sending the resumes, so it's super fun. So, no Alan sounds like James. That's just it. Like, you know, I know, you know, you I don't know if you guys read my Substack or whatever, but I have there's a Joe way of writing, right? And it's You know, so but that should be you too, right? And even in your cover letter, I would prefer that somebody writes just the way that the personality dictates. Like Aaron mentioned that he wrote that article that we were referencing earlier. He wrote that just on a Saturday morning. That's kind of how I write my Substack. It's just a stream of consciousness around, you know, sometimes of varying quality, but that's a different point. But all you can do is be yourself.
Yeah.
So.
And thank you note, the email, definitely 100%. I think you definitely should be sending out if you have their emails, I would say definitely send a thank you note. If you don't have their emails, find them on LinkedIn and send them a DM. I think that's like, I would say that's expected. If you don't do it, then I won't say I'll hold it against you, but if someone else did but you didn't, then it's just like someone just putting in, like, that's someone outworking you. Like someone is out hustling you by doing stuff like that. So I would definitely recommend to do things like that. It's those little small things that I think kind of keeps you top of mind.
Yeah, and ultimately, the golden spot is to basically, you can do the push method, which you're pushing a resume out, or you can do the pull, which you're pulling people towards you actually, and they would love to work with you, right? Like that's the spot you want to be in if you can do it. But that comes through content, that comes through getting, you know, just going out there and doing shit, right? Like, you know, and the cool thing is, you know, you can build an open source library, right? If you wanted to, or a project or whatever. Like there's nothing, the thing is, there's nothing to stop you from doing anything actually.
Correct.
Even the law these days, I'm just saying, kidding, but there's nothing to stop you from doing whatever you want, right? Except, you know, you and your time and whatever else. But if you have cool stuff, like, you'll build it.
I think people are nervous about what other people may think, but like no one cares, right? Like no one, if you start posting, like no one's going to start judging. If they do, who cares? Like I think that's the biggest thing that holds people back is they're nervous about like what their old coworker may think that they're posting on LinkedIn. It's like, forget, like who cares? Like just post and don't think about it. Like I just post things out there, and if someone thinks I'm stupid or dumb, that's great. I think I'm dumb too, but like just take away like this fear about judgment and what people think about you. I think that's what's really holding people back from doing all the stuff that Joe and I are talking about.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Zach Wilson's a good example, right? One of my best friends, he posts the most unhinged shit on LinkedIn that I wouldn't post. But the thing is, he doesn't care, right? And in fact, it works in his benefit because then it's controversial and it gets more attention and more eyeballs. So it's just like everybody's got a tactic. You know, his is just to be as unhinged as possible. Same with Carly, right? But but that's not. Aaron isn't Carly Taylor for a lot of reasons. But you know, so everyone's got their thing. But lean into it, right? I would say the big takeaway here is just, you know, don't be scared of getting out there and just being yourself. I think increasingly in this day and age, like that's what's going to be the big differentiator. But you have everyone has the same means of production. You all have smartphones with great cameras, unless you have a flip phone, then whatever. But but the cool thing is, I think you're doing the important thing too, which is showing up to a community like this, right? I think that's you could be doing a lot of other things like playing Fortnite or whatever the fuck you do. I don't know, but you chose to come here during lunch to listen to nerds talk about resumes. That's cool.
Yeah.
Aaron, you can close it out. I'll shut up.
No, like Joe said, I think the biggest thing is to put in the effort. So do something. Like we have a lot of opportunities between LinkedIn, meetups, Substack, YouTube. Like there's more than a million ways now to like get out there and make a name for yourself and make your presence well known. So the only thing that's stopping you all is just you and just kind of each other and just your own kind of insecurities or nervousness. But I would say if you want to get a job, you're looking to do these things, nothing's stopping you. Tell your individual story, tell your unique story, make sure it comes across to you. And eventually I think you will find something. So yeah, you just gotta put the effort in. Like, it's the only thing you can do is put the work in. If you don't, then you're the reason why.
Thanks so much, Aaron. It's a killer.
Yeah.
Got another community event tomorrow morning, or at least in the US. Cedric Chin, you might know. He's got probably the best website or best blog I've seen, Common Cog. It's brilliant. He'll be doing a kind of an AMA tomorrow, actually, and talking about Zimrid control charts and stuff that he built. But yeah, one of the smartest guys I think in the world. So check that out if you can, totally free. I posted something about Duck Lake, Hannes Mulheisen. We're just gonna figure out a time he can come and talk about Duck Lake. So That's dope. And yeah, got a few other things happening. I think DBT and a few other companies are going to be showing off some stuff. So if anyone wants to do a lunch and learn, by the way, let me know. I get posted. I don't really care, as long as it's beneficial to the community. You can talk about whatever you want. Your pet rock, I don't really care. But yeah, it's your community. So if you're looking for work, this would be a great way to step up and maybe and I think in a low pressure environment, work on your presentation skills. So think of it that way. It's totally opening up to you guys. All right, it's time to say goodbye. Oh yeah, we have a data therapy Friday night, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So if that's your time zone, show up to that as well. So, all right, later.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank
Thanks, Joe.
you.